Hello, and welcome to Random Words with Ryan. I'm your host, Ryan. Let's hit this button and start off with a word. Let's hope we get a good one. Jail. Well, I've never been to jail. Okay, it's actually a great word. Love this word. I have never been to jail, but jail makes me think of this really fun concept. Baker Miller pink. This is a specific shade of pink. If you want to see what it is, sometime go on to Google Images and search Baker Miller pink. Turn your brightness all the way up on whatever screen you're looking at, and you'll find it in there. You'll see a couple of variations, but it is a very specific shade of pink. Viewing this specific shade of pink tends to cause people to feel calm. Now, the idea behind Baker Miller pink is theorized to result in or be a result of the sunset at night, right? So at night we see a sunset that oftentimes is right red, and it kind of turns to pink. It really kind of hits on this Baker Miller pink. Exactly, really. And then we have darkness. So it is theorized that the reason this works is because that shade of pink is designed to prepare your body to relax and go to sleep and begin producing melatonin. So it's this is a really fun, powerful concept. Now, to tie this back to jail, the reason this makes me think of this is the concept of Baker Miller pink is also known as drunk tank pink, which you'll also find if you search on YouTube. It is all or well, you might find it on YouTube. It's definitely on Google. And basically, so if you're arrested for like public intoxication or even DUI, they have, a jail cell that they call the drunk tank. And more often than not, drunk tanks throughout the United States are painted this specific shade of pink. The idea is to create a feeling of calm in potentially a high stress, high potential for violence environment. And it works. And it works really, really well. The other place that I've heard of this concept used in a law enforcement environment was with Sheriff Joe. I forget his last name. It was like Arpaio or something like that. In Phoenix, Arizona, there was like kind of a jail type facility that he was running that I think was called like their tent city because it's outside and it's very unfavorable, very hot environment. All of the prisoners there wear pink underwear. And this had been talked about a lot in the 2016 election. Because he was, the sheriff was supporting one of the candidates very vocally, and this had come up a lot. And it's funny because in the media at the time, they had referenced this pink underwear jail, and it was, I remember people talking about it and thinking like, was this something that was designed to humiliate the people that were there? Was this part of the punishment? And the answer is no. This specific shade of pink is frequently used in a law enforcement environment to keep violence at a minimum. Now, just a quick, fun little side note. So knowing this, every time, and I got to cover up all the key things here, but every time I get my driver's license renewed, show you this. That is me. And you're going to see a pink shirt. That is the closest shirt I was able to find. Found it at Macy's. That is the closest shade I could find to Drunk Tank Pink. The idea here is you pull me over late at night and you see this, and you'll also notice too, you know, not only does it have the specific shade of pink, but there's also blue, which blue with the pink really begins to kind of replicate that whole sunset experience. So it actually works great. The idea here is you pull me over, you see this, hopefully it brings a calming feeling to the police, which should be, because I have no criminal record. And, I'm on your side. We're on the same team if you pull me over. So that's the idea. Feel free to use that for yourself. Hopefully that brings you some value. We're going to do a new random word. This one is suggested by the chat. All right, new word, transform. I was going, along the idea here of people making transformations, right? And that's something that I see a lot in a consulting environment. People redefining themselves. And so maybe I'll give some thoughts. Let's give some thoughts on some ways of transforming yourself. Well, there's a couple interesting concepts here that come to mind. So there's transformation on a personal level and how you identify with yourself. But there's also value in transforming the perceptions of yourself within other people. I've been down that road before, and I've dealt with that in a consulting capacity. So let's first begin with looking at some ideas here of transforming your perceptions of yourself in the community at large. And what you'll find is, like, the famous places where this happens is where you have a celebrity that maybe messes up somehow. Maybe it comes out that they are racist. Maybe it comes out that they are struggling with drugs. Maybe they have, any number of things that just goes wrong and begins to derail their career. And they have to go through a transformation, and transformation takes time. So one of the first things you'll see from a public perspective is they disappear. They jump completely off the radar. And if you're going through a transformation in the public eye, that is the first thing that you must do, is really disappear, go off the map. And there's a concept actually that we can talk about that's fun with the reason why. So this pen doesn't work. Let's try this one. So there's a concept called, so you probably heard of like something having a learning curve. It's got a big learning curve, right? And that means like where you have a concept, it takes time before you really begin to become proficient in that concept that you're learning. Just the same as we learn things and it takes time to learn. And by the way, like the learning curve, there we go. So okay, this should work. Let me hold this up and make sure that I did this right. Okay, yes, perfect. Okay, so this is essentially what a learning curve looks like. And what that means is, right, so the y-axis is essentially your proficiency with whatever it is you're learning, and the x-axis is time. So the learning curve is really suggesting that at the beginning of when you start learning something, you don't remember it very well. You don't have very good proficiency of the information. And as time goes on, your proficiency and understanding begins to accelerate at a much faster rate than it does in the beginning. So it happens that there's a concept called the forgetting curve that most people don't talk about except in psychology circles. And it looks something more like this. Okay. So there's a concept that we remember and we think about it. Now, if you think about something a lot, you don't really ever you don't forget it. Okay. It just kind of stays in memory. But when you don't think about something for a while, right? Eventually, your memory and your proficiency of that concept begins to dissipate and eventually go to zero, and you forget, or at least a lot of people forget. Not necessarily everyone, because there's people that have great memories, there's people that have horrible memories, and there's everywhere in between. But on average, you're going to have people begin to forget those concepts. So in this idea of transforming in the public eye, the reason celebrities disappear for at least 6 months, 6 months is considered the minimum in that profession of just disappear when something horrible happens, is they're waiting for people's memory of whatever it is they associate with them to begin to degrade. They're looking to capitalize on that forgetting curve. So that's something, if you're looking to change, I went through that. I went through a bit of a career change. I'd spent a bunch of years as a financial advisor, and then transformed into business consulting, specifically in the area of influence consulting. And for a while, for a long time, people thought about me in the perspective of a financial advisor rather than as a business consultant. And so in order to address that issue, I had to just disappear altogether, right? I didn't post anything on social media for, I think I waited 8 months. And when I came back, I started introducing slowly concepts of the new type of work that I was working on and the new type of content that I wanted to be known for. And it worked. You build momentum, and people then begin to see you as this new concept. So that's an idea as far as transform. If we're transforming, going under a public transformation, great word. Let's do another random word. We are going to pick another random word now. The word is goal. Love it. Love it. There's so much on this, but I'm going to try and think of the best thing. To achieve a goal that is very, very big, okay? Things like getting a college degree, getting a 4.0 if you're a high school student, right? Something that maybe seems unachievable, but is probably not. You just might not yet have all the tools to get there, but that doesn't mean you can't acquire those tools. Goals that are just seemingly insurmountable. There's a very important concept that you must know if you actually really realistically want to achieve something that seems unreasonably big. And that is the concept of small wins. Okay. And there was if you search on Google for small wins, Harvard Business Review, I think something with Harvard Business, small wins, you'll find exactly what I'm talking about. There is a research study that was done on businesses that are extremely successful in achieving big goals. And what they found in the research is the most successful of the companies celebrate the small wins, okay? Literally on a daily basis. And the reason for that is when you get a small win, something that you can define for that day that is a success, and you actually celebrate it at some emotional level, it creates that release of dopamine in your brain. And that dopamine gives you kind of that hit that you need to keep going. Remember, dopamine functions as a reinforcing chemical. It makes you want more of whatever it is you were doing when you experience that dopamine release. By the way, that's the reason like smoking is so addictive. When you smoke, your brain releases dopamine, your brain links the dopamine release to the smoking, and it creates the want of more smoking. So you want to create a dopamine release, preferably daily, when you achieve a specific goal. So in the case of like the 4.0, right? Maybe you're say you're a C student, and you study really hard and you get a B instead of a C when you're used to getting straight C's, okay? That's a win, right? And that's a win that you got to celebrate, right? And the goal may be to just have a straight 4.0, okay? But you're not just going to go from being a straight C student to a straight A student. That doesn't happen. That's not really realistic. But it is realistic to make incremental improvements up to that point. So you get a B on maybe a quiz or on a test. You got to celebrate that. Like whether that's parents out there with students that are struggling, you have to celebrate. Help your kids celebrate these small wins. Legit, get that thing on the refrigerator. Get grab a favorite piece of your candy, whatever it is. You have to link a success and celebrate whatever the win was. And you have to try to get as many small wins as you can, preferably per day. There's another great example of this concept that's used with goals with the Navy SEALs. I had a Navy SEAL explain to me that the concept of they were teaching this class, they required them to do 500 push-ups, okay? And that seems like a crazy goal for a lot of people. And really it kind of is if you're not used to doing 500 that's a ton of push-ups if you don't do push-ups on the regular, a lot of them. And even if you do them on the regular, 500 in one sitting is a tremendously high number. And I remember what he told me was fascinating, and it was this similar concept. So if you want to do 500 push-ups successfully, you don't think about it as doing 500 push-ups, even though that's your goal. Okay. What he said that they taught him to do was all you do, the only thing you're going to think about in this time frame, in the short moments ahead of you, is we are going to do one push-up. That's it. We can all do one push-up, right? Pretty much anybody can do a push-up if you're in good health, good physical shape, able-bodied, you can do one push-up, right? That's what you do. You just do one push-up and you have a success, okay? And you literally, what they teach them to do is to only focus on the 5 seconds ahead of them and doing one push-up. Don't even count the number, right? You just do one push-up. And as soon as you're done, now the only thing you have to do is one push-up, right? You don't think about it in terms of doing 490. You still have to do 499 more, right? You're just going to do one push-up, right? And you're going to celebrate that success in your head. Like, of course I could do one push-up, right? Of course I can do one push-up. And you're psyched about it. And now you've done 2, but you're not thinking about it that you've done 2. And you just do. I remember him, he told me this he said, when the goal is to do 500 push-ups, you don't do 500 push-ups. You do one push-up only 500 times. And I thought that was such a fascinating concept. It uses the same brain chemistry as this, as the celebrating the small wins to achieve any large goal, whether it's in business, whether it's in school, whether it's with personal transformation, absolutely anything. So hopefully that concept gives you something fun, some value to work with. Those are my thoughts on the word goal. Let's take another random word. All right, the next word we are going to do is investigation. Ooh, I like that. All right, here's an interesting one. So I have a contact who does investigations, does fraud investigations, and specifically dealing with like financial frauds. And I don't remember how exactly the conversation came up, but I remember him saying something that I thought was very interesting. So when he's doing investigations, he had to look for little clues that clue you into the fact that like something may be awry in the numbers. And in his investigations, I remember him saying probably the biggest red flag that he would come across is when you see round numbers. The more round a number was, the more likelihood that that number wasn't right. Either it was rounded or it was fabricated. And the idea is, right, like, so, if we're looking at like, first of all, the degree of roundness is important. So, if we're looking at the number 1,500, 1,500, so that's kind of a round number to the nearest round 500s place, right? Or hundreds place, we'll say, but it's not as round as 1,000 or 2,000, right? And the bigger the number is, the more round we'll consider it, right? So we're going to say that like 1 million is even more round of a number in this capacity than say 10,000, right? The odds of a company selling exactly $1 million is not particularly likely, right? And so when you see a round number, as an auditor, it tends to be a sign of, you want to dive deeper into your investigation. That's kind of a starting place for your investigation. And while that applies to him as a financial fraud investigator, I'll give this to something in context that really applies to anyone. And it's something that I see on the regular. So, in the news, okay, when you see a news story and you hear a round number, oftentimes it means that number is bullshit. Okay. And you'll see these things in, political discussions when one side is trying to make a point. In political discussions, you could hear, 10,000 people cross the border every day illegally, right? And I'm just making up a number and an example. That's not actually true. I don't know what the number is, right? But I do remember recently seeing stories like that in the news. And it's like, no, probably not like 10, like, so exactly 10,000 people a day, like is it an average of 10,000? Is it an average of 10,000 over the last 3 days, over the last month, over the last 3 years, 10 years? They don't tell you any of that. And yet those are very important questions because they don't give you any context. So when you see round numbers in reference to something that is occurring without any sort of context whatsoever, usually that means the number's bullshit. And that's a place to investigate and really investigate what the actual story is. And take the story with a grain of salt because, you already know that that's probably not very likely. It might sound sexier, right, to say, 10,000 a day rather than, well, yesterday, 7,317 people illegally crossed the border. But maybe that's the true number, right? So it's a very specific number. Your odds of events being, falling exactly on a zero round number are extremely slim. So when you see it, know that it's usually bullshit and a place to begin your investigation. Those are my thoughts relating to investigation. Our next random word is going to be tender. Tender makes me think of TLC, Little Tender Loving Care. Tender. Tender makes me think of pain. Pain takes me back to a lecture. I learned a lot of really interesting things. What I remember learning specifically about pain was that there are two chemicals that are associated with pain, and they are glutamate and what was known as substance P. And I remember them saying that they were simplifying that there are a couple other chemicals that apply to pain, but those are the big ones. And I remember that those two chemicals were responsible for 80% of the pain that you feel. So if you get injured, right, or you experience pain, you're getting a shot, actually, I know, let's look at pain from the perspective of pain with kids, right? The other day I saw a kid fall down and he was instantly in pain. So 80% of pain is these chemicals that are part of your neurological structure, right? The remaining 20% of pain is entirely mental. Okay. And that level of mental attribution to pain functions as a multiplier to the 80% that is chemical based. Okay. So how you perceive pain, what pain means to you, and what you feel when you're experiencing pain is directly related to your experience of how much pain you perceive yourself as having. Okay? So, parents out there with kids, if you have a kid that falls down, it is extremely important that the look on your face is a face of calm. Maybe even a smile, as counterintuitive as that is, right? You see your kid fall. Nobody wants to see their kid fall. You might be worried. You might be scared yourself, right? And a lot of parents will have a look of fear and terror on their kid, and they'll run up to their kid and immediately coddle the kid, they may not necessarily be thinking that the pain is actually that bad. But they will experience an emotional response that mirrors that of yours, right? So if they see you with a look of terror on your face, they begin to associate in their brain at a very young age, and in a way that lasts for the rest of their life often, that this level of pain should be associated with this level of fear and terror. And that actually causes people to suffer more with pain. And by the way, that concept of suffering, to take another tangent, makes me think of something that I heard about a year ago from a neuroscientist that was a very fascinating concept on this. The difference between pain and suffering. So pain is a physical discomfort. Suffering is the experience of pain with the fear of with the fear of not knowing how long the pain is going to last. Okay? So pain is the experience of it. Suffering is who knows how long this is going to go on. Now, let's blend a couple concepts together. Okay? So previously, in another word, I had talked about, of doing the 500 push-ups, right? And if your goal, that was the word was goal. If your goal was to do 500 push-ups, you don't think about doing 500 push-ups. You think about doing one push-up, and that's it. And you think about it only as, you think only in terms of the next 5 seconds, right? You chunk your time, okay? And so if you are in pain, and this is how we tie this together, the way to get through the pain is to mentally chunk the time, right? So if you're in a lot of pain, you don't think about, right? Great example, like a family member who had a surgery in the recent past, and they didn't know like when the pain was going to last, right? Like how long after the surgery were they going to be in pain? Was this going to be 3 days, 3 months? Like, you don't know when it's going to stop. And that's when you experience that kind of pain where you don't know when it's going to end. That's when you begin to mentally suffer as a result of the pain. And so the way you get through that is you focus on getting through today. Okay. You don't think about 3 months. You don't think about 3 weeks. You think about, all I've got to do is get through the next hour even, right? Or the next, just through tonight. Tonight, I'm going to eventually get to sleep. I'm going to no longer be in pain. It's gone. I reset the next day. Okay. Maybe tomorrow you wake up, you won't be in pain anymore, right? You get through by chunking the time. In psychology, in the concept of Alcoholics Anonymous, this is something that is taught to alcoholics that are struggling with sobriety. 1 day at a time is the concept that's frequently taught at AA. It's also taught in counseling environments. 1 day at a time. You don't think about being sober for, the rest of your life if you're struggling now, right? If you're not struggling with sobriety, then you can think about it that way. But if you are, you don't think about, a goal of being sober for 6 months or a month or 2 weeks. You think about, how do you get through today? Okay. And that all of that, whether it's the push-ups, whether it's sobriety, whether it's pain, the concept of chunking time is the key to all of that. Okay. Those are my thoughts stemming from the word tender. Particular is our next word. Got a little dictionary right here. Let's, I mean, I know what it means, but I kind of want to just see what the dictionary says. Particular. Here we go. Particular. Of, pertaining to, or associated with a single person, group, thing, or category. Particular, separate and distinct from others, specific. Particular, exceptional, special. Giving or demanding close attention to details. Fussy. Interesting. An individual item, fact, or detail. There's many meanings here. All right, I like going with particular as it applies to this definition. Giving or demanding close attention to details. That's a great one. Giving or demanding close attention to details. Attention to detail is a function of a personality trait that we call conscientiousness. When we're talking about personality traits, we're always talking about, well, I shouldn't say always, but typically we're talking about what's called the 5-factor personality model or the Big Five personality model. We use an acronym called OCEAN. OCEAN. O, openness to new experience. C, conscientiousness. E, extroversion. A, agreeableness. And N, neuroticism. Conscientiousness is what comes to mind when I think of this definition of particular. Now, when we look at success and the psychology of success generally, research shows that IQ is responsible for, I think it's about 30% of the achievement of success. Usually in like looking at professional success, but it could be in just acquiring proficiency of anything, but particularly like an intellectual level goal, your level of IQ does matter. However, I think it was about 25% of your success is directly attributed to your level of conscientiousness. One way of looking at conscientiousness, and there's a couple different facets of it, but one of them is the level of attention to detail you give to things that relate to the activity. If you're looking to achieve more success, you need to have higher levels of conscientiousness. Now, a lot of your level of conscientiousness directly relates to your childhood and how you experienced and learned conscientiousness growing up. If you are a lower conscientious person that pays lower attention to details generally, there is a way to train higher conscientiousness. You see this in the military, in boot camp. So when you're trying to train conscientiousness, you focus on the concept of space control. Okay. And conscientiousness is built in, you think about it, in building concentric circles around your life of space and activities generally. Here's what I mean. When you're building conscientiousness in someone, the way to do it is you start with focusing on your innermost personal space. You look at like your room, right? The room that you sleep in, right? Not even the room. Start with the bed, okay? You make the bed. And this is something that happens in boot camp, and it's talked about, it's portrayed in movies. Service vets will talk about it. You're trained usually in boot camp, to make your bed a very specific way. And a lot of times people think like, oh, this is, they're just trying to get in our heads. So when it's not made a very specific way, they can yell at us and it's a discipline thing. And they're just trying to mess with our heads. No, this is specifically how the military trains conscientiousness, and they do it with very specific reason. Every particular detail of how you make the bed matters to them. Right. And you think like, well, why does it have to be made this specific way with this pillow here and this pillow here and no wrinkles on the sheets? And it has to be tucked in, at the end of your sheet has to be tucked into the bed in this very specific way. Why does it even matter? They just want you to focus on the particulars and see your ability to control the space with excruciating detail. That's all they care about. They want to know that you can handle this piece of space. And so that's how you begin building conscientiousness. Now, once you make your bed a very particular way, then you focus on the rest of the room. Is the room clean? Okay. Are clothes where they should be, or do you just have clothes laying on the floor, right? If you have your clothes laying all over the place, you're acting in a way that's showing less conscientiousness, right? Also in the military, every piece of clothing you have is folded a very particular way. And you're managing the space now of those clothes in addition to the bed. So the bed is the innermost circle. That's your most personal space where you sleep. Then you expand to the room and your control of the room. Once you have control of the room, do you have control of the rest of your living space? Now, from a military perspective, right, we're training soldiers to do complex activities with things like explosives and firearms, okay? Things that are dangerous, high risk things, okay? So what they're looking to do is make sure that you can maintain a successful level of conscientiousness on your innermost personal space, because if you can't handle the bed, handling the intricacies of a complex firearm is not going to be good. You're going to put somebody's life at risk. You're going to put your own life at risk. It's bad news bears. So the idea is the military builds conscientiousness in your innermost space in the barracks. And then when you've shown proficiency in your ability to do that, we're going to be looking at higher proficiencies in the battlefield, right? So we're going to learn how to handle the firearms. We're going to learn how to handle explosives, right? Then you're going to learn how to traverse space with those firearms, right? That's a bigger level of concentric circle, right? So conscientiousness is built in your innermost personal space and then expand it. So you focus on your bed, then you focus on the room, then you focus on, your apartment or your house, then you focus on outside of the house, right? So if you're like a business owner, for example, right? Business owners, entrepreneurs must be extremely conscientious or they will fail. By the way, that's one of the biggest reasons 95% of businesses fail in the first 5 years is a conscientious issue. If you don't pay attention to the marketing and the finance activities and business regulators and the taxes and, your customers, the technology, all the aspects of business, if you're not conscientious and aware of all the particular details, your business will fail. So if you're not showing adequate conscientiousness in your innermost personal space, you probably want to start with getting that under control, building up some confidence in your level of conscientiousness before you take it outside of the house into the real world where there are higher levels of risk. Your conscientiousness it just makes sense, right? IQ is first, conscientiousness is second. The particular details matter on your space control. Get that under control, and you're going to have much more success in life generally. Those are my thoughts stemming from the word particular. All right. I see here where we are in terms of time. This is probably a great place to stop for the day. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you got some new concepts that we dug out of my brain by throwing some random words in as a catalyst and seeing where things go. I think this was fun. Thank you to all who have joined. If you have not followed, please do follow the my channel. We're gonna be doing some more fun content here in the future. We can take this down. I don't know. I like this idea. Let me know what you think in the chat, or if you're watching this on YouTube, let me know in the comment section below, and we'll take your ideas here into consideration. If you have some random words, feel free to throw those in the comment section too, and they might be addressed in an upcoming episode of Random Words with Ryan. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Have a great rest of your weekend. I will see you with more content to bring you value very soon.